Looking at the clown, right? Pretty cool, right? Killer Clowns from Outer Space. Cult classic from the 80s. Good game, and a good movie. Well, welcome back. Good to see you. Retro Game Vault After Hours. Episode 1, technically. I'm kind of cleaning up, so walk with me. Well, if you like spooky stuff, then boy do I got a show for you tonight. It's all about good old Resident Evil, for the most part at least. I've got actually a couple of guests for us to talk to today. We're going to look at some really cool items, as well as look at some valuable data. Of course, the whole point is that hopefully at some point we learn something along the way. So hopefully that happens. But with that, I'm pretty much good to go. So let's get on with the show. Okay, data segment. I'm going to be comparing two games today that have absolutely nothing to do with one another. But hopefully, by the end of the segment, I'm going to make a point that will make sense, and you'll completely understand why I even brought it up. Or at least I hope so, or else this is going to be a waste of 5 minutes. But let's see what we got today. Same as last time. First 24 months of this store being open, that's the sales figures I'm using. Nothing more, nothing less. That is just what we are going off of. But, with that out of the way, let's bring up the first graph over here. So this is the compiled graph of sales figures for copies of Wii Sports. Specifically, not the big case version. This is the smaller pack-in one. For the record, it's this one here, right? The one that came packed in with Wii's, okay? But let's take a look at this graph a little bit closer, okay? As for the price line, the line in the middle there, you see a low of 22 and a high of 25. That's only $3 of fluctuation, which is pretty darn negatable, especially as you'll notice this graph includes copies with and without the manual. Wii Sports is essentially an extremely consistent game as far as value goes. This is completely normal. The supply and the market demand have stabilized. It's been about this price for years and years and years. There's nothing really crazy about that. I am, however, going to draw your attention to the little line underneath that main line at the bottom of the graph. Now, this is the volume line. It's also important. However, most of the time you can ignore it because it really doesn't matter as far as price goes. But today, let's just take a peek. This is how many copies I've sold in a month. The most sold was 9, the least sold was 2, but overall, you can see that I sell an average of 4 copies a month. Sometimes a little more, sometimes a little less, but just like the price, it's relatively consistent with about what you'd expect for a game this popular, right? Now, go ahead and take that knowledge that I just showed it to you, and you're going to try and guess what game I'm going to compare it to next. Go ahead, take your guess. You're not going to guess it, but if you do, that'll be cool. You got your guess locked in? Well, if you were going to ask about Technic Beat, the arcade rhythm game on the PlayStation 2, I'm not sure how you got that answer, but that is the one that we're going to talk about today. So let's go ahead and put this graph up here and take a look at that one. Wow, that looks absolutely nothing like the Wii Sports graph, doesn't it? No, it really doesn't. Let's analyze it anyway, though. It's got a low of 12, a high of 13, pretty much no fluctuation whatsoever. And yeah, I wonder why there's no fluctuation ever. Let's look at the volume line again. I've had a whopping 2 copies in 2 years. Yeah, exactly, right? Now let's just go ahead and lay the graphs on top of each other. I know we didn't take too much time to look at that, but there's not a lot of data. But if we lay them on top of each other, it tells a really interesting story. On one half of things, we have the 4th best-selling video game of all time. Literally over 80 million copies sold. It's got a constant supply, a constant demand. It is essentially the staple of my monthly sales report. And on the other side, we have a game that, while I love it a lot, and I will swear by it, amazing soundtrack, fun gameplay, there really is nothing like it. Let's be real, I'm confident that Technic Beat didn't sell 1% of the sales that Wii Sports did. In all honesty, by the way, I looked everywhere for sales figure on Technic Beat. I couldn't find anything. I can tell you it didn't sell 1 million copies, but I can't tell you anything definitive outside of that. But what does all this mean, right? Well, what does this prove? Well, this is basically a long-winded way for me to point out the difference between something being rare and something being sought after. Wii Sports is constantly in that $20 to $25 range, but there's literally millions and millions and millions of copies. Technic Beat is not. It is not anywhere near as common as that. In fact, if you look on eBay at this exact given moment in time, when I recorded this obviously, there are more copies of Rule of Rose on PlayStation 2 available than Technic Beat to buy. But somehow, I managed to buy this last week, a sealed copy, for like 23 bucks. Less than a copy of Wii Sports. So the point I'm making today is that just because a game is rare doesn't mean it's valuable. Just because a game is common does not make it cheap. Does that make sense? Now, please don't freak out and think that Technic Beat is this super rare game that you have to buy because you think it's going to be worth more in the future. That's not the point of this. But you should buy it if you see it in like a local game store. It is fun. It's worth a shot, right? I just want to show you this game is good. But anyway, with all that out of the way, let's do some rapid-fire Resident Evil statistics, okay? Resident Evil 2, I have had 6 copies of the PS1 version, 3 copies of the Dreamcast, 3 copies of the GameCube, and 3 copies of the Nintendo 64 one. Something else interesting is I've only ever gotten 2 copies in those first 2 years of the misprint version of Resident Evil Revelations for the 3DS, which is also a very good game. But you know what else I've only had twice in 2 years? The subject of the next segment. So keep an eye out for that. Lighting was a little bit better this time, but let's see the next segment. So, what is the subject of this segment? Behold, Resident Evil Biohazard, the Collector's Edition. This one is specifically for PS4. Chronologically, this is the 7th game, hence why the VIIL and, the logo looks different. This thing is incredibly hard to find and fairly expensive, but it has been since day one. If I remember correctly, this edition was a GameStop exclusive, where obviously you could pre-order it, but 90% of online pre-orders just straight up got canceled. But we're going to open it today because, as I mentioned in the last segment, this is a rare item that I've only had 2 come into the store in the 2.5 years that I talk about with the data segments. Now, let's take a look at a couple items here. You've got the Steelbook. It's got the game in there, but for some reason I elected not to open and show the camera. I'm not sure why I did that. But then we've also got the VHS tape here. And while it looks like an actual VHS tape, I promise it's not, but it is cool. We'll come back to that in a minute. I always love when companies print stuff on the styrofoam they use to protect things. It just adds a little bit to the effect, So in here you've got the main item and the reason that this is such a fantastic edition. Not the silica packet, surprisingly, but this right here. This is a beautiful replica of the main house that the estate sits on, that is the place that you play the game in. Now you see the awning is a little bit broken. I got this secondhand, so beggars can't be choosers. With how hard it is to find, I'm just frankly shocked that I have one at all, much less one in decent shape. So after we're done rotating around, you can see it's a pretty faithful reproduction of what you see in-game. And on the bottom, you've got the logo for the game imprinted on there, as well as you'll notice a battery slot. Now, that's there for a reason. We're going to go ahead and set this aside, and we'll probably revisit that in a second, because that is half the reason this edition is so darn friggin' cool. So moving back over to the VHS tape, this thing, while already significant to the actual game itself, it actually holds stuff in there. It's sellotaped together, but, you know, all good things must come to an end, so we're going to crack this bad boy open. And by that I mean we're going to skip forward a little bit because I struggle really bad to get the plastic off of this darn thing, but luckily with the power of editing we can just not worry about that. And now we have one of the tapes. Beautiful, ain't it? Now, while this isn't actually a full VHS tape, because that would be friggin' amazing, it is still pretty cool because it holds a few other items that you might have seen in the little preview on the side of the box. Let's go ahead and crack it open here. It's unfortunately a little warped from the heat. Like I said, I got this secondhand, so I can't really complain too much. The fact that I've got anything at all is really cool for something like this. But let's go ahead and pull a few items out of it, and we're just going to set it up there. It looks pretty darn good. Now we've got first this little note. Look at that. Wow. Very scary. Full of blood. Old blood. I wonder what that means. You're going to have to play the game to find out. Maybe. And then you have, well, let's look at the VHS tape again. I'm searching in there for some reason, but don't know why. Let's move back over to the finger, right? And here you have this awesome friggin' skeleton key finger thing. Now, once again, if you've played the game, you know what this is. If not, I'm not going to, like, spoil anything, but it's kind of cool. Now, you've actually got joints on it, which is kind of cute. But more importantly, this finger holds a secret, and we're gonna figure it out. This is the first time I've ever opened this, so I'm struggling to figure out how to access it. Give me a moment to struggle, but there is, in fact, did I figure it out? This part separates here. This part separates. Look at that. Boom. Yeah, it's actually got a USB drive attached to that you can plug into your computer while you're at the local library and look like the weirdest guy in the room. But I kind of like it. Let's go ahead and lodge that joint back into play. Now, I am going to briefly talk about the one item that's missing from my edition here. When you bought this new, there was actually a big black envelope that contained a lithograph for the dinner scene from Resident Evil 7, but mine didn't come with that. Like I said, secondhand, take a shot for every time I explain that I've had this thing secondhand. It's a nice little sequence, but like, you know, whatever. Beggars can't be choosers. Now that we've packed the VHS back up, we're going to head and go back over to the actual house, the Baker house, if you're wondering. But let's go ahead and highlight the most important bit. I'm going to stop talking here because there's a crank under the chimney that you can actually spin, and something happens that's interesting. And look at Evelyn in the side of the window, just like the side of the box. Friggin' awesome, isn't it? This is why this is pretty much my favorite collector's edition that they've done with any Resident Evil game, and also like one of the crowns of my collection. I know it's a little damaged, but still, this thing is so friggin' sweet, it's ridiculous. But, we're gonna go ahead and reassemble this, put this back in its box, and then we're gonna take a short break, and on the other side of the break, we're gonna highlight a few more Resident Evil items that you may or may not know exist, some of which are really weird and I don't know why they exist. But we'll deal with that in the next segment. See you after this short break. Okay, we're almost done, but I'm still getting things ready to talk to my special guests, so we're going to review a few more promotional little items. Not collector's edition pieces like the last segment was about. This is just little promo items connected to a couple of the games, and boy does Resi have a lot of them. To start things off, I'll get something a little bit, more rinky-dink out of the way. These are the Resident Evil 6 Walmart exclusive character decals. The cute little things, they're completely inoffensive, but Walmart actually advertised these to try and get you to buy their copy, which is kind of funny to me in a sick and twisted capitalistic way. They're kind of dumb, but I kind of like them. It's better than just having nothing, I guess. But there's a lot of Resident Evil promotional stuff. Big thing you can always check off the list with any sort of franchise out there. There's gonna be different shirts, right? I got a couple examples here. These belong to my friends. These ones aren't specifically ones that I own. This one here is what I believe is a launch shirt for Resident Evil 2, hence the Resident Evil 2 logo on the back. But this is the old stock from when that game launched. This next one's a really cool one that's got characters and the logos for Nemesis, Resi 2, as well as Code Veronica. This is another one that I believe was of the time. It's not like a modern throwback. This is vintage stuff right here. As well as, I know it's Resi 5, but a cool little shirt from the launch of Resident Evil 5, right? Speaking of Resident Evil 5, did you know that one actually got a console? Yeah, in America, we got this, which is the Resident Evil 5 Special Edition Elite Model Xbox 360. As far as I can tell, right, this was something that we just got in America, and it's interesting in the fact that it's just red. There's no logos on the console. It's just a 120 gigabyte hard drive size Elite 360 that's red. And of course it came with Resi 5 and a few other little trinkets in there, but you couldn't tell if you just found the console by itself. If you didn't know, you would just assume this is the red edition. Resident Evil 4 also got a special edition console, right? This is the Resident Evil 4 Special Edition Platinum GameCube. Once again, as far as I can tell, this is a PAL exclusive, so you had to live in like Europe and the UK and stuff like that. This actually belongs to my friend Mitch, who we will be talking to in the next segment. No reward on guessing which one he is, considering it's coming from the UK, but you get my drift. This also includes the game and a little bonus disc, which is just kind of cool. Now that being said, let's say you want a console, but you can't afford the crazy expensive special edition ones. You can get these little puffy stickers, right? Now these just go straight on top of your console. There's ones for GameCubes, there's ones for Xboxes, and this one specifically is one for Resident Evil 4 for the PlayStation 2, the Fat Model one. It's really cool. You can keep it in this awesome Resident Evil Extinction bag. I guess that's kind of a throw-on bonus item there, but that's for the movies, that's not for the games themselves. And look at that beautiful modded fan on the back. I just kind of love it. Anyway, going back over to the actual exclusive for GameCube, GameStop got their own special edition for the game of Resident Evil 4. Comes in, once again, this just beautiful red. I think that's just the associated color is red for Resident Evil. This was a GameStop exclusive in a beautiful tin, and as far as I know, I think this is the only special edition of the original release of the game. But of course, if we're talking like promo items, especially attached to Resident Evil 4 specifically, how can I talk about this without talking about the chainsaw controller, right? This is the chainsaw controller, and it is a functional controller. They made these for both the GameCube and the PS2, and I believe the color varies depending on which one you have.
This is another one that's belongs to my buddy Mitch. He's letting me use it for this video, which is kind of cool. One of these days I'm going to track down one of them, but I got to find one that is in good enough shape for me to want to buy it and in a reasonable enough price, you know. They're a nightmare, by the way. The start button is the pull cord, so good luck using this in any realistic circumstance. Another little cool promo item, this one belongs to another one of my friends, my friend Micah, this is the Japanese exclusive promotional steel card that you could get with Resident Evil Code Veronica. It's a strong, cool piece of metal, and it's actually harder to come by than you'd imagine, for what it is at least. When it comes to like rare things, this is probably the rarest of all of them. It's a trade demo for Resident Evil 2. This one belongs to Ian, the other one of my two guests. Once again, no guesses for who that one is. It's from the retail kiosk, and as far as I'm aware, it's the same build as the retail demo discs included in like Resident Evil Director's Cut, but it's sick because this thing is crazy limited. There's very few of these that exist in the world. A little bit more modern item, getting away from the retro stuff. This is the drink kit. It's a more recent one based off of the first aid items and ink ribbons of like the Resident Evil 2 remake. And as far as I can tell, I think it was limited to 4,750 units. I think they're individually numbered. There's not a lot of them in the world. Obviously, it was limited, but they are kind of cool for the kind of people that use that kind of thing. For me, it's not something that gets a lot of use, right? As you can imagine. Now, something that does get a lot of use, and is half the reason I wanted to do this segment, is my Resident Evil Outbreak File 2 toolkit. Now, this is just about as basic as you can see. It's a toolkit with a handful of different pieces, different, like, bits. It's got a flashlight on it just in case for emergency, but obviously I got this one for secondhand and the light bulb doesn't work, so eventually I'm going to get around to fixing that. The other cool thing is it actually comes in two colors. I have the silver one, but there's another one that's a different mix of different colors. Now I'll admit, I don't own this. This is the Resident Evil Darkside Chronicles / Resident Evil Umbrella Chronicles accessory. That's the Magnum / knife combo pack. You basically put your Wiimote and nunchuck into the holders, and you have a more authentic feel for these games, which is just freaking cool. So while you already should play the Chronicles games, if you're going to play them and you have an extra couple $100 laying around, you may as well get it more cool, right? But that's not the only gun I want to talk about. I'm going to cut to this. This is the opening cutscene for Resident Evil Revelations. And the reason that I'm showing you this is because you get a good look at Jill's Beretta. This is Jill's main weapon through, like, all of the Resident Evil games, right? Now, this is a real gun, right? The Beretta is a real gun that you can buy in real life, and that's what this is. This is a real-life Beretta. You can see they look similar because they're the same thing. But then this is not a real gun. This is the PlayStation 2 Resident Evil 2 style. It's not official, right? This is the Beretta pistol light gun peripheral, right? Now, this is terrifying. It's really cool, but it's terrifying because I know what you're thinking. You can almost definitely mistake this for a real gun. Now, of course, do you need this to play Resident Evil Dead Aim or any other light gun game? No, but it's really cool to have. And if you were already scared of it being a little bit too close to a real gun, this is the PS1 version, right? So if you're playing Resident Evil Survivor in Japan, this is what you had. And unlike the silver PS2 one, this is made out of metal. I'm like legitimately uncomfortable even handling this, knowing it's a fake gun. But it is really cool. Now, eventually, I want to do like a long-winded video just breaking down how cool these light guns are. But we'll just cut it off at today. We'll put a pin in it, and we'll come back to it later. Now, by no means has the past like 7 or 8 minutes been in a full list of all the different peripherals, all the different accessories, all the different promo items with Resident Evil. But I figured I'd give you a small sampling of just a few of the things available, right? Now, let me know what you think if I missed any like major ones, but I think I covered just the basics, because I'm sure there's a million other things I could talk about. Let's get all this out of the way. I think my guests should be ready. So we're going to talk to Mitch and Ian here in a second, and they're going to tell us a lot more about them and their love for Resident Evil, and hopefully, once again, the goal is to learn something. Maybe we'll learn something.
Okay, so these are my two guests for the day. I've known them both for years and years and years. They're very talented individuals. On my left, you have Mitch. He's a very handsome man. He does artwork. You have Ian on the right, who also does artwork. So remember that. We're going to lead in and talk to these people, and we're going to start with Ian. He's going to tell us a little bit about who he is and what he does.
Okay, so I'm an animation director. I've been working in animation for probably about 30 years, but part of that capacity was in video games. So I worked in video games on the Game Boy Advance games, Game Boy Nintendo DS stuff, a little bit of Wii, a little bit of PS2, Xbox. Had a couple of years there, and then eventually went on to doing commercials, which is where we met. I started an animation company, and Mitch flew in and said, "Please, sir, can I have a job?" And so,
pretty much, word for word. Yeah.
Yeah. And I said he had to finish his meat before he could have any pudding. So, but and then that evolved into just working into visual effects and films, and then teaching. So, kind of a full gamut life sitting before you here, and I'm still pretty fresh. I'm deodorized and good. So.
Very nice. That doesn't happen very often.
Sure. So I brought a couple of samples here of some of the things that I've worked on. So we'll start with this one right here. Can you see that okay? Mm-hmm. So this is Tom and Jerry Tales for the Game Boy Advance. Now, we were supposed to get a copy of the game every time we completed it. So I've got two copies of this, one sealed and wrapped and one open for me to play. But on the back you can see I did the character art and animation for Tom and Jerry, and a little bit of the environment art on this one piece. So if you get a copy of this and you crack it open, you'll see my name in the credits there. Another one, so this one has a funny story. I also worked on this one. This was one of the first games I worked on next to the Justice League game, and they had me, the first character animation I worked on this one was a merchant character, and he was supposed to just be hanging around and waiting for the hobbits to make up their mind. So I decided to have the character cross his arms and just kind of rock back and forth on his heels. Right? Like he's like, I'm just waiting for you. And the character is this big on screen, right? But if you park the characters in front of the merchant when he's doing that, it became very questionable. And it became kind of a laughingstock because it made it in the game, and I don't think it ever got changed. But so enjoy that little Easter egg tidbit. Last but not least, I worked on Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends. We got to work on Blue and a bunch of the space alien characters in this as well. So this is just kind of a smattering. I have 12 ship titles, but I just brought these 3 in for fun. You know, and then a little Teledesk Pro game there too. So there's some fun stuff there that have some history and some stories tied to them for sure.
I like that. So we're gonna move to Mitch, right? And he's now gonna tell us what he's done, because he also is pretty good in that industry.
Yeah, so I came over from the UK and decided to live in the US.
Loser.
I know. And so basically I've done pretty much almost one of everything creatively. I've done video, I've done animation, I've done 2D illustration, everything. And I started my career with Ian, working animation, doing client animations and stuff. But at the time I was also going to college, and I was doing the University of Utah's video game degree that they offered. And so one of the requirements for finishing that degree was to create and publish a video game. So my sort of capstone for that project was Dive on Steam, which is a pretty okay game. I did all the animations for the character, and I modeled some of the debris and stuff. Basically, you're an astronaut who's just falling through space and you're dodging debris. It's very similar to Superman 64 in the fact that you're dodging and just going through rings and things like that. But that was really fun to actually work in 3D, get those animations done, and then to have a finished project on Steam was really awesome. And then since then I went into teaching. I taught 3D animation rigging, I've done conventions. I sell my artwork at conventions, and now I've fallen into graphic design and my side hobby, which is my YouTube career now. So,
what are you both doing like now, right? I guess whoever wants to go first. That's your previous career history, stuff you've worked on. What is your current thing that you are pursuing and doing?
So I kind of rekindled my love for miniature painting and from my teenage years, and I dug out a bunch of old Warhammer and stuff like that, and fell back into that hobby. And so I decided to make a YouTube channel based on it. So you can find me. My YouTube name is Mini Paint Mitch, and it's been really fun. I've been doing a video every week, just setting myself a personal goal of getting a video done, and just creating these projects and creating these painting challenges for myself, as well as just getting through this vast back catalogue of miniatures that I have to paint. But it's been really cool to see this community grow and get subscribers and followers and people that comment every week and come in and tune into my stuff. So that's been my latest passion project. But other than that, just the usual 9 to 5, which is a graphic design position, which is also really fun. So I'm flexing those skills that I've taken from my career. I've worked in marketing, I've worked in design and illustration and animation, and now I'm applying it to my own work as well, which is really fun.
Boy, I'm trying to find myself still at the age of 46. You would think that I might have discovered a voice or picked up in anything. I'm still struggling and learning, but through animation and illustration, after several years. Right now I'm partially working for the graphic design job as well, doing some work on the side, but I'm pursuing my master's in animation from Savannah College Art and Design, and my goal is to basically get my master's in animation. I would eventually love to go take classes from Gobelin in France, eventually be able to go over there, but that's after kids moved out and etc. I also moonlight as an animator for Living Scriptures, Line Upon Line on YouTube, so you can see some of my animation work there from time to time. And I just finished working on a horror film doing visual effects, which you can see on Tubi, called Sorry Charlie, and that now is on Tubi.tv. Aside from that, like Mitch, Mitch is much more successful at this than I am. I started a YouTube channel. I call it the Paint Panther, and I haven't painted a damn thing on there. I have a bunch of drawings and portraits and stuff. Oh, Clipstick. Can we talk about Clipstick?
Yes. Do you want me to get that, or should I just B-roll it?
Yeah, B-roll it. Yeah. So.
Okay.
So about 10 years ago, I came up with a comic book idea, which I brought on a writer, and I brought in a colorist and an inker, and I penciled the thing. It was about 1940s, 50s mob wives who got tired of their mob boss husbands murdering, raping, and then coming home and being husbands. And they didn't like the duplicity, so they decided to take up guns and wipe out the mob bosses themselves. The book's called Clipstick. We just had our first successful Kickstarter campaign, and we'll roll the B-roll of the cover of issue number 1. There's a variant cover by Chad Harden, who illustrates for DC Comics, I still believe, and for Harlequin and whatnot. And now I'm working on the Kickstarter for issue number 2. So those are a couple of other different things that I'm working on right now. So,
very nice. One thing I love to help out with is creating collections. What do you go for? What do you go into game stores like this one or other ones looking for? What are you trying to complete, I guess?
So a lot of it is
jewel, right?
Yeah. A lot of it is like the Holy Grail, right? The one thing you're looking for, the one thing that you're after.
The one that got away,
or a few, yeah.
We have a combined saying. Right? What's the saying we say?
Buy it when you see it.
Buy it when you see it, because if you don't, you ain't getting it.
You'll figure it out later.
And we've missed out on so many
terrible advice, but yes, you're right. We have missed out on several things.
So many deals.
But the other thing is like, when you go into a game store and you're just browsing, you've got the bangers, right? The heavy hitters that are in the cabinet, but oftentimes it's like filling in those gaps in your collection, those things that you remember seeing as a teenager or something, and being like, oh, I really want that, but I never got around to it. Right. And now with like a lot of like YouTube gaming channels and stuff, it's bringing to the forefront some of these crappier games and some of these games that weren't really in the limelight as much. And so now I find myself buying like the worst games ever, because it's like oh, that's kind of cool. I'd never played this random spy hunter game, and it's got The Rock in it. That's really awesome. So now I want to play this,
Well, the games are so perfect made these days, right? They're really tight systems, especially if they're AAA titles.
Yeah.
But what's fun about playing crappy games is that the stitching comes apart a little bit, and you can kind of start seeing, where things went wrong or horribly wrong in some of the things you told me that you've been playing recently, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like the was it Alone in the Dark?
Yeah, the Alone in the Dark from 2008 on the 360 is like one of the worst games I've ever played. But it's James McCaffrey. Max Payne is the voice, and it's like, how cool is that? So
yeah, you and your wife were laughing pretty hard about some of the stuff going on there.
So a lot of it is just like just getting these moments in time that have been lost. Some of these games aren't backwards compatible anymore. Some of these games are just locked to the system that they were created. Half of these Game Boy games you can't play anymore. And so for me, other than illegitimate means. Which I don't really enjoy doing. I much prefer getting a physical cartridge, physical disc, putting it in the original hardware, and just reliving that childhood again.
Well, let me piggyback off that concept, because one thing that I love is the concept of a white whale. So what are the white whales? What is the one?
Resident Evil Gaiden.
Yeah, we're hunting a copy of that right now.
Not Game Boy Advance, because it's Game Boy proper, right?
Yeah, Game Boy Color.
Because it has the battery in it.
Color, yeah.
Game Boy Color. Yeah, that's a white whale.
I'm a big survival horror guy, so we've got...
We'll get there.
We've got Rule of Rose, Obscure, Haunting Ground.
Kuon.
Yeah, Kuon.
Clock Tower 1 and 2.
Clock Tower 1 and 2. With the Switch remakes now in limited run, getting ready to bust out. Get your pre-orders now.
I'm fortunate enough to actually have all my Silent Hills. I'm fortunate enough to have... well, in the UK it's Project Zero, but here it's... Fatal Frame.
I'm fortunate enough to steal them from all my brother's collection when he's not looking.
So those are on my hit list right now.
But what's the white whale though? The one.
Yeah, the one. It doesn't have to be rational.
You're Indiana Jones in the room full of chalices, right? And this is the cup of Christ, right?
Let me give it some thought, because I have one.
We can loop back to. Do you have a white whale, Ian?
The one that comes to mind is. It's just off the top of my head. It's not the one the one, right? But it's for some reason, I've been a Sega guy from day one, right? Because all my neighbors, my friends had Nintendos growing up, so I decided to buy a Sega. So I got a Sega Master System, but I got the version right after the initial cut. Okay, the one right before mine, the first release of the Sega Master System, has the controllers where the wires come out the side instead of the top. And on that console, okay, I don't think they launched with the game originally as a cart, but there was a hidden game on the console itself called Snail. So you turn on the Sega Master System game, and it would boot up like nothing's going on, and then you play this little snail that would just eat little Pac-Man dots, and you had to find your way through these mazes before the time ran out, right? It's such a bizarre, was something to quell, right? Is a need to quell, right? But it's one of those things that I've never seen one since I was a kid, and I don't know if I will see one now. Maybe online eventually. But I think that's probably one of my white whales right there.
It's reasonable.
Yeah.
Have you figured one out?
I keep circling back to Rule of Rose. I think it's
that's fine.
And the reason being is because because he's got one already.
I've got one.
Yeah, and you've got one.
You don't get out of this room. You don't belong
one
in
of you
here.
guys is going to sell me a copy, but when you do that eventually, and the reason being is because it is the value of it so high. I know it's not even a rare game. I know it's not even a good game.
It is a rare game.
It is rare.
It's just not sought after.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I've seen so
I literally
many copies
covered
of
that
it.
in a previous segment in this video. So.
Yeah.
But
I think he meant to say rule of bros.
Yeah.
It's a couple.
Now there's
guys.
another one that I am after. This one's a little easier to get. It's called Monkey Puncher on the Game Boy.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I had a copy of that, and I left it when I was on vacation. I left it in the glove box of a rental car, and so that went immediately as soon as we got back. It was like, oh, it's gone.
Yeah.
So that's another one I'm looking to replace, but that's fairly inexpensive.
what is like, if you were to rate your intensity of collecting, right? Like 1 is, I see a game that I've been waiting for, I'll grab it, I use Game Pass, etc., etc. Versus 10 is like, I'm completing every game for every system. Where do you rank yourself, and why do you gauge that's where you're at?
I would put myself probably at a 7 or an 8. Obsessive, but not to the point of every title in the line. You know,
you can still feed your family.
Yeah,
you still put gas in the car.
I've got other hobbies, like miniatures is really expensive, and collectibles and things like that. Yeah. So I try to like pick and choose. Now, like I say, I'm fortunate enough to already have like most of the stuff that people are hunting. But if I was to start from scratch, especially now with game prices, price charting, skyrocketing things, I can't imagine doing it, you know. So if there's a game that I'm after, or a game that I've seen a video on or something, and I think that's quite interesting, I'll hunt it. But yeah, I'm sort of there.
Yeah, I'd say as far as my collecting prowess goes, I'm probably around. I'm more of like this stage of my life, I can kind of afford the things. I have adult money now, right? So I save up to get the more pricier things. So I'm not collecting as much. I've slowed down quite a bit since I was younger. But because I'm very particular about the things that I buy, I'd probably say I'm around 6. You know, when it comes to avid, just hardcore collecting. Like if it if it has Star Wars on it, you're a dead duck.
Right.
It could be it could be a diaper. It could be like whatever it is.
George Lucas's tax return. Yeah, I've already bought it. Like
it could be Marge Lucas, and he'd still pick it up. But it's like for me, it's like what I do is I do the 2-touch test, right? What I do is I walk into a store. If I see something I want, I go, okay, I've been chasing this. I've been looking for it. Let's look at the price. Okay, I know what I'm dealing with now. And I set it back. This. If it's something I really want, I come back for it. If it's something that I don't think about again, I don't pick it up. And I use that to kind of like gauge how much I really want something. And so, and that's kind of a new philosophy I've had to adopt to kind of stop my house from burgeoning at the seams.
I've seen people buy like every time they go into a store, they buy a copy of Wii Fit or something, and they've got like 100 copies of Wii Fit.
Just go to DI.
Right. I'm not like that. I like to have just one. Like I've got a few copies of BioShock on different systems and stuff, but like it's when they buy multiple copies of the same thing, like VHSs and stuff. I don't get to that level.
We all like Resident Evil here. Resident Evil is really, really friggin' good. But why do you guys think it's good? What draws you to that franchise specifically? Like to me, where it's just friggin' moths to a lamp. I will buy anything Resident Evil. Why do you?
It's the new religion, right? It's the evangelist. It comes down to the first time I think that you touch the property. For me, the first time I touched it, Sega had just parted ways, right? Dreamcast and Saturn were dead ducks. So now my choice was I either got to go Nintendo or I got to go PlayStation, right? And at the time I was working at a department store, so I grabbed a PlayStation. And then they dropped this survival horror game, right? And I was right in my preteens, young teens, mid-teens, right? Because I was working at a department store. And I remember thinking, am I brave enough to tackle this? Now, I'm also a big comic fan. And a very popular comic book artist that I loved growing up, his name's Bill Sienkiewicz. He had done the cover to Resident Evil 1. So right there, I saw it on the shelf, and it was Bill Sienkiewicz. I was sunk. I had to have this thing. I didn't care what it was. And I think the first key moment in that game is when those damn dogs come through that window. You realize you're in for a real treat of a game.
So I went from, as a kid I had a Sega Genesis, and then my very first 3D system was a GameCube. Not for want of like a PS1 or a PS2, it's just at the time that was the next step I could make was to a GameCube. So I grew up going to my friend's house and watching them play Resident Evil 1, 2, and 3 on the PS1 and being super jealous and just being like, oh man, like I'd love to play these, but as a young teen I was like, oh, these are a little scary, but this is kind of cool. And then Resident Evil 1 Remake launches on the GameCube. So good. Dude. So I was
That's a love
right
letter right there.
And then all of a sudden it was roles reversed. Everyone was coming to my house to play this new GameCube release of Resident Evil 1. To this day, I still think it's actually my all-time favorite. if I was to
Yeah.
break down, including all the remakes. I know, but that to me was like they got me into the franchise, and then when Resi 4 hit, it was like
A game changer.
that. Yeah, and so I went all in on Resi 4, and that was it from there. In over the years, like Resident Evil 4 is kind of I've gone in and out of love with Resident Evil 4. It is the most bold and crazy at the time, but now I'm like, I don't know. There's something about Resident Evil 2, the atmosphere, the environment, Raccoon City, Under Siege, like that to me, I think is speaks more to me now. But it's whatever flavor do you want that week, right? Like,
well, Resi 4 also abandons the concept of zombies. I mean, even the creators
Right.
flat out say these are not zombies. So you're already like somewhat predisposed. Like a Resi game has zombies. Like what are we doing different here? I was actually working in games when Resi 4 came out, and we had one of the kids that was in the team. He got the giant cardboard cutout of Leon from like a GameStop or something like that, Game Haven or something. And so I was sitting up right at the end of my alleyway when I was animating, working on it. And I remember we just played that game just nonstop because it was such a unique and bold take on an old franchise, you know. Because Resident Evil was starting to wear out, even to the point where the creators were getting tired of working on it.
Yeah.
They're like, we don't do another survival horror game like this, you know. But when 4 came out, it was like, you know what? You know, we can make things just as terrifying as zombies. And it cashed in spades. It was beautiful.
when I remember following development through gaming magazines, how strange of a concept is that, right?
What's a
Yeah.
magazine? This is a foreign concept.
And I remember seeing like early development of like the Hook build, right? The Hookman build with the ghost and things like that, and being like, "What is this? Like, this is awesome. This is supposed to be a Resident Evil." Not knowing at the time this was where they made the switch from Devil May Cry, and that then became that franchise, and then they sort of rebuilt it from the ground up. But so a group of friends and I got together one time, and we decided to do a Resident Evil speedrun before speedrunning was a thing, and what we ended up doing was we put 2 CRT TVs back to back and had 2 PS1s, and this was like a kind of schoolyard dare. It was like, I can beat Resident Evil quicker than you, and yeah, whatever, I know it like the back of my hand. So these 2 guys sat down and they hit go on the power both at the same time, and they did as quick as they could Resident Evil 2, and it was the most fun I've ever had watching watching a speedrun. Because it literally came down to the point where they were neck and neck, and they were both going different ways and skipping different items, and it was tense the whole time. And then one guy went through a door and decided, no, I don't want to do that, and went back through that same door, and that cost him the run. And it literally came down to it was 7 seconds apart.
Wow.
I think it was like 2 hours or something ridiculous, like 2 hours and 13 minutes or something.
Wow.
And it was literally because the guy went through and went, no, I don't need this room, and that's what cost him the whole run.
Wow.
But it was awesome. But
And
this was way before the internet, way before speedrunning was a thing.
Yeah.
For sure. What is your advice you would give people looking to get into things? You mentioned before, the 2-touch rule. That's a good rule. You mentioned buy when you see it. That's good. What is your advice to people looking to start fresh into collecting?
Know what you're getting into.
Yeah.
Because price charting has leveled the field, unfortunately. Before price charting became a ubiquitous tool, you could haggle for the value of something, because if who you were buying it from liked it less than you could get it for cheaper, right?
Right.
And so if you're a huge fan of this game, you could arguably get it. But now price charting has created kind of this, we all universally accept a price that fluctuates on a daily basis. So in order to beat the curve, it's like stocks now. I mean, it's crazy. Watch when things are up, watch their trends, and watch when they dip. And when they dip, go for it. That's probably one tip I'd give,
There's a lot of the Xbox has really great backwards compatibility. A lot of retro titles are on there, a lot of 360 original Xbox. So if you're just looking to play the game, that's a great way of just getting in and spending $10 on a fairly rare game and being able to play probably the best version of it, the frame rate and things like that. But if you're looking to actually get physical collector's stuff, I would say buy it when you see it, which is a terrible rule to have. But there's been so many times where I've held stuff put it down, turn around, it's gone. And literally that quick. Get to know local game stores, get to know...
Shop Retro Game Vault.
Yep. Come to the Retro Game Vault.
Bronson's got everything all the time.
Go to local conventions, go to local shows. There's people selling stuff there. I see a lot of like Reddit posts and stuff of people going to like yard sales and finding deals. I've also heard some horror stories of people showing up at like 5 a.m.
Well, that's the treasure hunter, right? I mean, that's the treasure hunter.
So don't get obsessive, and because that will come across as well. Like if you start to like nag people, get really into it, it's going to put people off the deal.
You know, one thing that helped me a lot was this sounds kind of weird, but pick a family. Okay, and what I mean by that is like when I first started out, when I settled on Sega Master System, I knew that I was going to be loyal to Sega, and it's made my collecting so much easier through those formidable years because I couldn't buy the Nintendo stuff, I couldn't buy the Xbox stuff, eventually the PlayStation stuff. When I went to the store, it was the Sega section I was after, and that's the only one I could get. But that's the one where I was looking for those types of games because those are the types of games I liked.
What is your parting words? What would you tell people going forward? This is the last thing they're going to see of you until the next segment,
Okay, I've got mine.
I'm going on. Here you go.
Okay, gaming's great, but it's not life. Okay, there's much more fulfilling things in life than gaming, but gaming is great icing on the cake of life. Okay, so if you find yourself to the point where you can't take care of yourself or those around you that you love, you might need to back it off, and you might need to realize that you're missing out on some stuff. Okay, these worlds and these stories that they tell are fantastic, and you can spend a lifetime going through all these. Like I've done, like you've done,
Yeah.
But unplug and get out for a couple of hours a week, a couple of days a week, and gaming becomes that much more sweeter because now it's kind of an exclusive thing you get to do from every now and then, rather than all the time. So that's kind of my thoughts on that. Especially as you get older, it's harder to do. So.
Yeah. I would say like diversify your hobbies, like find other things as well, like and they can be adjacent. I really like Star Wars. I'm a mad Star Wars fan, and there's Star Wars games, but there's also like Star Wars films and toys and action figures and stuff. And that way you don't just put every penny of every paycheck into that one thing. You can diversify, and you get a nice collection of weird and obscure stuff that way. The other thing I would say is like life's short. Just do what you love. If you want to buy the thing, buy the thing. Like just you're on this rotation once, right? Like just do it. And so like there's so much of your life you spend working, and just do what you love, and that will come through. Like through your hobby, through interacting with other people. You just become. Can
we do like a do what you love, the more you know star rating?
Yeah.
The more you know, right?
Yeah. That's my advice.
Yeah, do what you love, get what you love, and everything in moderation and balance.
Yeah.
Beautiful. And one last thing, why don't you shout out your socials again? Tell us where people can follow you.
I have to look mine up. You can find me on IJJ Animate, and you can see some of my artwork there and stuff that I posted there. I also have, this is on Instagram, Johnstone Pictures is my other one. So IJJ Animate or Johnstone Pictures. And then last but not least, there you go, the Paint Panther. You can find me on YouTube, and I do a lot of drawing in real time and stuff like that on there. So, and eventually painting.
If you want to follow some of my artwork and my convention stuff, my Instagram for that is Mitchell's Pixels. There's also a Facebook group for that. And then my YouTube, my painting is Mini Paint Mitch. And there's also, that's on YouTube, and there's an Instagram for that page as well.
Beautiful. Well, we're going to take a short break, and then we're going to get to the last segment, which is we're going to put your knowledge to the test, and I'll see if I can't stump you. We'll find out. It'll be a team effort, so we'll see how it goes.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we're on the last segment of the day, which is the quiz segment. Mm-hmm. We've got Mitch and Ian here. I'm fully faithful that they can get at least one of these right. Maybe. So we're going to see. We have 5 questions that get progressively harder, and we'll see if these guys are fake gamers or not. Are you fellas ready?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can
We're
take, you can
ready.
take a spot now.
This is a team
there you
effort.
go.
This is a team effort.
It's too far over.
Oh, is this in?
Yeah, you're good. You're good.
It's a team effort.
This is a team
right,
effort,
all right.
so I'm only accepting one answer. I'm not going to accept your
All
answer
right.
unless you two are in unison on it. Okay?
Yeah.
So we're starting with question number 1. The game Resident Evil Revelations, the first one,
Yep.
is actually one of my favorite Resident Evil games, believe it or not. It's a game that has been ported to like 1 million platforms nowadays. However, if it comes to the platform of what it originated on, is it A, the PlayStation 3, B, the 3DS, C, the Wii U, or D, the PlayStation Vita?
I know what it is, dude.
Let's see. This is stuck for a second.
It's on the 3DS.
So that's your final answer. Are you in unison? It's B, 3DS. That's what you're saying.
Yes.
3DBS. Yes.
Good, good. You got the one question I knew you'd get right.
There it is.
Okay, time for the hard questions, okay? So, question number 2. Batman Beyond Return of the Joker is a mediocre beat-em-up for multiple systems. It came out in the year 2000 and released on only 3 platforms. I'm going to list 4 platforms, and you tell me which one it didn't come out on. Did it A, not come out on the Nintendo 64? B, did it not come out on the Game Boy Color? C, did it not come out on the PlayStation 1? Or D, did it not come out on the Dreamcast?
It's COD.
Yeah, I'm on the same page. The handheld stuff was pretty thin, and Batman Beyond came along a
I've
little later.
seen. In my mind's eye, I can see
Year
that stuff.
2000.
Yeah, so that would have been handheld
Yeah,
stuff.
Okay. So it's got to be Dreamcast.
It's gotta be Dreamcast, I think.
Is that your final answers? D.
Lock us in.
Dreamcast. Lock it in. Good. It did not come out on the Dreamcast. It came out on the others. I like how you pointed to. I've got a copy right there for 64.
No.
Okay. Now is when it's going to get hard.
Okay.
Third question. While they truly hit their stride and are known mostly for their adaptation of The Walking Dead, the California-based studio Telltale Games has adapted a crapload of different franchises to games. Now I'm going to list 4 franchises, and they have adapted 3 of the 4.
Okay.
What is the franchise that is not adapted to a game by Telltale?
Gotcha.
Is it A, Ghostbusters? Is it B, Jurassic Park? Is it C, Wallace and Gromit? Or is it D, Back to the Future?
It's A.
Hey,
A.
That's it? Lock in A?
Yep.
Ghostbusters?
Oh yeah.
That doesn't exist, you're correct. You guys are doing great. See,
Yep.
this is good, this is good.
I just picked up the Game of Thrones Telltale, so yeah, it's fantastic.
I just picked up the Wallace and Gromit one because I
Yeah.
saw that was on. There's a Bone one. Have you ever read the Bone comics?
Yes.
There's a Telltale Bone game. There's 2 of them.
Oh wow.
actually.
Wow.
Anyway, Resident Evil's a moneymaker for Capcom. They've released a ton of games, but only one can be the best-selling Resident Evil game currently, right? Of all time. Legacy sales figures, all different ports, etc. Okay? I'm going to list 4 games. One of these is currently the Resident Evil game that has sold the most copies. Okay? Is it A, the original version of Resident Evil 4? Is it B, Resident Evil 5? Is it C, Resident Evil 2, the remake of it? Or is it D, Resident Evil 7 Biohazard? And this is across all ports, all versions.
He said Biohazard. That's the Japanese name.
No, it's
It's the sub name of 7.
Yeah.
Just
So,
7.
okay, so
honestly, this could be a guess. But
Yeah.
I will say
the remake is up there because there's a lot of talk about it. Is there a reason why we're not considering 5? I mean, it's 5, but I mean, is there a chance that they could have just, because of the hype of 4, people basically
that's why I'm worried about it. Yeah.
because they could have overcompensated
Yeah.
thinking it was going to be another. So I'm wondering, I think he's trying to trick us. So I think 5 maybe because of the anticipation of how well 4 did. But he said to this date though. So that implies it's still selling. Which Resident 2 remake is. Let's
Flip a coin, to be honest. Like,
Yeah, okay. Okay. We will flip a coin. I agree. And my vote's gonna be 7. And we'll say. So, what do you want to say? Like heads or tails? 4.
I'll do heads.
Heads. Okay. I have a big 50-cent piece here. Okay. Heads is 4. Tails is 7. Okay.
So you're locking in Resident Evil 4, the original version.
Sure.
You are not correct. You guys kiboshed the real answer immediately. It's 2 remake. It just barely, like 3 months ago, went over the threshold. Now it's sold 7 in Village.
There's just so much talk.
I know it didn't. It came out, it was hyped, but then it didn't sell as well as like other Resident Evils in the past. I didn't realize it was still accumulating that whole time.
Okay, we're moving on to the last question.
Oh.
Okay, last question. Question 5. Some video games are good, some video games are bad, but where you go for the sources on a good game versus a bad game varies.
Retro Game Vault.
See, that's bad games.
I thought you said where you go to get all sorts of games.
That too. So we're gonna use as a baseline, just like last time, Metacritic averages, right? Metacritic only on critical scores rank games 1 to 10, and then it varies that out of 100. Duke Nukem Forever has a 49 out of 100, almost exactly in the middle. I'm going to list 4 games. 3 of these score better, and 1 of these score worse. Okay? Pick the game that scored worse
than Duke
Nukem Forever. Okay?
Yep.
Is it A, Resident Evil Operation Raccoon City? Is it B, Resident Evil Survivor? Is it C, Resident Evil Dead Aim? Or is it D, Resident Evil Outbreak File 2?
Okay, it's not File 2.
No, it's not.
And it's not...
Dead Aim, you could play without the gun. But I don't know if it was the best experience that way.
I think it was Survivor that you could do without the gun.
Was it Survivor without the gun?
Dead Aim's on the PS1, I think.
Dead Aim's PS...
Dead Aim's PS2.
2.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Survivor's PS1. Dead Aim's
Gotcha.
Yeah.
It's Operation Raccoon City.
Well, that's your vote. Because I know how much you love that game. I'm gonna lean towards Dead Aim, but and Survivor? Why would not Survivor?
I mean, they're all bad, but I think like,
I'm gonna trust. Yeah, I'll trust
All
the.
right.
No, we'll trust the Raccoon City.
let's lock it in.
Yeah, we lock in Raccoon City.
A, Operation
Yep.
Raccoon City.
Operation Raccoon City.
You are incorrect. It is Survivor.
Oh,
Survivor, they like Pan Survivor. It's got like a 38. Don't know why. Everything else, guys, just
It's got more
barely
than a
above
49. Operation Raccoon City. Why?
I don't know.
I bought a copy.
So final score, you got 3 out of 5.
Oh.
Nothing to sneeze at. Nothing to sneeze at. Not too bad.
We have our Metacritic score is above at least.
Yeah, we're
Slightly
49.
better than Duke Nukem Forever. Okay, I have a prize for that. You're gonna have to give me a moment to get it. So build anticipation. So I bestow upon you guys today
I'm kind of sad about
your
myself right
prizes,
now.
which are
better.
these cool
Whoa!
Fallout little miniature
Dude.
army men-like figures.
Thank you.
Awesome.
I don't know if you can paint them, but you should be able to.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
these will be on the channel.
Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Great.
Those are your prizes.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
And,
brother. Thank you.
hopefully, I'm gonna get back in frame here. Hopefully,
yeah.
you've enjoyed episode this one of RGV After Hours. Saying goodbye once again. We have Mitch, we have Ian, both amazing people, and we hope to have them back later. But bye.
See ya.
Okay.
Dude.
Dude, thank you.
That's awesome.